here because I take it on camping trips every year with my dad when we go on road trips around the U.S. I'm so excited to be joining you. And just for further proof, I'm close too.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too high for you to stay home. The stakes are too
morning in June, a woman took her dog for a walk. They went to the grassy field behind their neighborhood. On this day, the husky would not stop barking at the woods nearby. The woman followed as the dog pulled the leash forward, snout close to the ground. The dog settled to stay put on one side of the meadow and began to excitedly dig away at the dirt. As she tried to stop her pet from tearing out more grass, she noticed a video camera in the pit the dog had dug. The camera was clearly buried by someone. She couldn't imagine why. The video camera was intact and in good condition, with the exception of a few scratches. She activated the camera and viewed the 3 clips in its memory. They featured multiple takes of a girl in a NASA shirt, proudly displaying a red folding chair. In the background of each clip, the woman could see distortions in the air, like heat waves running along the tree line. After watching the videos, the woman heard a whimper and saw her husky being dragged into the woods. She told police that the 2 invisible men in the footage were responsible.
This was a natural nuclear reactor. 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 This was a
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds. A Trinity. My brother, my wife, myself, sat in seats near the blast. A Trinity. Flash, heat, and sand. Our skin blistered under the light of a three-person god. A Trinity. Later, we stood. Frank and Kitty had no friends, but I felt someone unseen. He rested his hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Thank you, Father." A Trinity. The divine are unobserved, and the unobserved are divine. Unearthly beings described by man reside in that place unseen, clearer than air, and purer too. If man should reach that place unseen, would he become divine unobserved? To become invisible is to become hidden from Creator. To become invisible is to become left out of laws of nature. To become invisible is to become superior. For an invisible man can rule the world.
Taranto was frozen in time. I could have spent my entire life there, but it would be like I was never born. To stay in Taranto would be to stay asleep. Asleep from the rest of the world. I stepped onto the Cleveland on December 10th. It stayed on port all day. It was like a tease or a test. A test for my American dreams. Right before midnight, the Cleveland sailed. I did not go to bed that night. I wanted to see Italy disappear completely. For I want to escape completely. The Cleveland arrived in New York 2 days before Christmas. Inside the ship, there was so much life, warmth. It insulated our optimism. On deck, there was nothing of the sort. It was cold. It was rainy. It was quiet. In rain, the Statue of Liberty was almost invisible. This was America's welcome. America's cold breath. Imagine an immigrant in New York. No friends, no family, no English. But I wanted a taste of everyone else's action. I ran to a store and bought myself a gift. A snow globe of Lady Liberty. She was underwater, like a fish. The Statue of Liberty should not be visited on Christmas. I went because I wanted to feel American. There is a reason why it is closed. On Christmas Day, they let liberty breathe.
getting down again. It's a silly story, but what a lovely place to put Mussolini and Hitler after the war. They could stay up there forever, telling each other whose fault it was.
One of the true wonders of the West, and all America for that matter, is Devil's Tower National Monument. Rising like a great stone fortress from the plains that surround it, it looms up on the horizon to a height of 1,280 feet. It was America's first national monument. Now behind this immense stump-like rock formation lies a fascinating...
Eventually, expert climbers volunteered to risk their own lives to get him down again. It's a silly story, but what a lovely place to put Mussolini and Hitler after the war. They could stay up there forever, telling each other whose fault it was.